Good everybody, welcome to the Unable Seaman podcast, the podcast designed to take a light-hearted look at all things boating and fishing in New Zealand. I'm your host, Jake Kerr, and joining me once again is my first mate, best mate, Christian Jensen. G'day, mate, how are you?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. And, this time, I suppose, I'm not going to be the only guest here, I hear.
Well, that's exactly it. Every time we start this, you give me shit that, the only reason I get you back on is that I can't get anyone better. And this week, I've done it. I've actually got someone much better, knowledgeable, and I actually think you're under pressure. You really have to fight for your job here.
I think it's okay. Like, I can go. I can leave any time to change some nappies or something. I'd rather do that. Nah.
Sick of something you're good at. Anyway, I won't leave our guests hanging for any longer. Our guest for this episode is a man who has dedicated his life to the safety and enjoyment of others on the sea, both back in Ireland as a member of the RNLA and in New Zealand, providing practical, hands-on courses for boaties via his company, Powerboat Training. On top of it all, he has one of the best Instagram accounts, providing daily content reminding us of the importance of boating safety via some outrageous clips of people getting it wrong. He is, of course, Captain Andrew Flanagan from Powerboat Training. G'day, mate. How are you?
Hey, gents, how's it going? I just have to add there, I think, Christian, you should be horrifically upset with that. If I'm surpassing you now, he's really scraping the barrel.
Oh, yeah, no, we've had some other bloody barrel scrapers too, like Mike Rumney and all that. Oh, yeah.
Sweet.
That's him never coming back on. Hey, Andrew,
He's our mate, it's okay.
Yeah, we can give him a bit of a hard time. Hey, thank you so much for joining us and giving up your time. You've just mentioned how busy you are and with all the things you're juggling, and I want to get straight into it about what Powerboat Training is and talk down the line about your thoughts on some of the issues with boating. But I want to go right back to the start, and I want to ask you a question. What is your first boating memory?
Oh, my first boating memory. It's got to be back to my days at the RNLA when I was a volunteer crew member at Whitstable. So just, it would have been when I signed up there. And actually, when I just signed up on the RNLI lifeboat crew in Whitstable, we had a process of 6 months where you had to do the utter shit at station when the tractor come back covered in mud, and you'd have to power hose it down and do all that. But my first vivid memory was the lifeboat operation manager calling me up to say, the lifeboat's capsized. So that's
wow.
pretty much my introduction to boating, and it kind of set the tone for my boating career. But I don't know if that quantifies or not. But
Please don't tell me that lifeboat capsizing is the one in the Times picture behind you that's framed. Behind you there.
Yeah, that was yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's
gosh, it made the paper.
Yeah, well, no, that was the job we did a year afterward. So that was a big job. It was actually, so that boat capsized. It's on YouTube. The Whitstable lifeboat capsized. Then was interested to have a look. You could YouTube that and have a look. But literally about a year and a couple of days, there was a very similar situation, with the forecast, and the weather was really, really bad. And then we went out, we did a job, and we received an award for that. And that's what that's about.
Oh, awesome. Mate, he sounds qualified, Jake. He sounds more qualified than us.
I was thinking, like, the thought of sort of you and I interviewing someone about boat safety is a bit like one of those guys who stormed the Capitol asking someone about politics. It's totally the other end of the spectrum.
Oh, it is really... Okay, so I can tell you my fond memory of boating with Jake, right, Andrew? So we're on Lake Tarawera, and Jake had this beautiful boat, a bayliner. I described it like when you cut a circular piece of, the camembert cheese, and you cut it out like a little wedge. That's what this boat looked like a wedge of cheese and it had a motor on it. Flipping huge.
Designed is what it was.
Yeah, whatever. So the original motor was a Force 125 that put out about 30 horsepower. It sometimes got on the plane. Jake was like, I'm going to upgrade this motor with a 150 V6 two-stroke.
Oh, yeah.
And it could boogie, it could boogie. But anyway, I can't remember if we had this motor at the stage, but we had some battery issues. And I said, Jake, whatever you do not turn off your motor. Like, just leave it on and we'll putter around. So we're out there in the middle of Lake Tarawera, and he turns off his motor, and it doesn't start again. And then he gives me a couple of screwdrivers and said, we'll just connect one battery to another battery with these screwdrivers. And it'll be fine.
You can hold tight.
Hold tight. And was it fine, Jake? We got a toe in the end, didn't we?
Oh my God!
We got
I
told
thought you.
back. This is
I thought you got.
embarrassing. This is an advocate for boating safety here, and you're talking about all my dodgy things. You're supposed to leave that till later. The dodgy things I've
Okay.
done.
Okay. Sorry. I won't.
I thought you were going to tell me you're featuring some of those Ministry of Trim videos. You know, the ones where they stick the big donks on the back and they're pulling wheelies
Oh,
everywhere they go away.
Left it all
when
the
they
way up.
basically like
Oh,
fly. I sent you one of those, Jake, and that dude's just zinging across.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
man,
love it.
crazy.
It really is crazy. Just going back to the RNLI. So for those of us that don't know, what is it and why don't we have it in New Zealand?
Well, you kind of do in some senses. So basically, the RNLI, it's about a 200-year-old organization. It's not far off 200 years.
Jesus.
And yeah, so it's like got a lot of history and a lot of sort of a lot of past, you know. So what it is it's the RNLI Royal National Lifeboat Institution. It provides the search and rescue coverage for maritime emergencies around the UK and the Irish coast. It's crewed mainly by volunteers. So it's just like the Coast Guard here, really, you know, because it's crewed by volunteers. But there is quite a few full timers as well. Like the you know those big orange lifeboats you've probably seen on videos, the lifeboats in the UK. So in those stations, they'll have one full time, maybe a coxswain or a mechanic to look after those boats. But boats like the inshore lifeboats, which are the ribs, the inflatable lifeboats, they wouldn't have any full timers at the station. They'd all be volunteer crew. But the Coast Guard in the UK and Ireland is actually government run. So I had to get my head around this when I moved to New Zealand. I didn't really understand the structure. So back in the UK and Ireland, the Coast Guard is government based there, and they do all the logistics, the coordination, all the land based stuff, and provide the helicopters under contract to Bristow's or CHP, I think it is. So in New Zealand, you've pretty much got the Coast Guard, which is the volunteer organisation, and you don't have really a government organisation. And I guess, look, it's really probably just size and scale as well of population, and that's probably why it's a little bit different. Ireland kind of tacked on to the UK as well with regards to the UK when they're providing the lifeboats. Ireland kind of a bit historical there as well, but they kind of tacked in and managed to score a few boats off of them and kind of folded into the RNLI as well. But yeah, so does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think, given that we have one of the highest per capita boat ownership, rates in the world, are we missing
1.2 million or
there?
something, eh?
Yeah, something like that.
Huge.
And we've got an entirely volunteer system essentially. I mean, Coast Guard emailed me the other day about my things due, and they're saying, "Oh, we're really sorry, it's going up another $20 because the cost of fuel's gone up and everything." And I mean, for me, that's just a no-brainer. You pay it, but it's interesting that we have one of the highest per capita rates, as we just mentioned, and yet it's all sort of done on a shoestring budget. To me, that doesn't seem right.
I guess, Jake, you could probably say the same about the St. John ambulance service, and also the fire service with some degree has got, I guess it's half volunteers as well, probably more so St. John. It's kind of similar there. I'd say it would take, the funding would be, quite significant, and I guess there'd be no government politician would be keen to step forward and say, "Oh, I'd like to shovel a few $100 million in another direction that we don't currently need to because there's not a calling or a demand for it." The market has kind of been it's been serviced well enough as it is under certain perceptions. So why not just keep the status quo rather than shoveling extra money into it? Maybe.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I suppose so. It's just harsh for us, eh? They're really passionate about it.
Yeah. I mean, the volunteers as well. There's merit for having a professional operation. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I come from a volunteer background. I started as a volunteer as well. But you do get very much a mixed bag as well with any voluntary organisation. It depends on the quality of the training. It depends on the quality of the units that are actually adhering to the training framework. So you do, there's always a strive, and I don't profess to know the ins and outs of the Coast Guard structure in New Zealand, but I guess you kind of want to just maintain consistency of the training, and it's harder with volunteers who are giving up their time and they have events to attend, and they're not there diligently Monday to Friday. Because I mean, if you look at the US Coast Guard, for example, all they do is they just train and prepare for the end of the world pretty much, and it's all they do, and their quality and what they do is just absolutely top of the range. Obviously, just one little step below the RNLI, obviously. But,
Of course,
I love it.
obviously, yeah.
No bias
and I
here.
said that too on my
Yeah.
page. A lot. My page is probably about 40% American followers, and
Is that right?
I say stuff like that occasionally, and a few noses out of joint, I think.
Yeah, I bet you.
I love
Yeah,
it.
Americans have an interesting sense of humour, that's for sure. So you've mentioned a lot about training there, and I suppose that's a nice segue to talk about your company, Powerboat Training. First of all, how did it start? What was the sort of need, I suppose, that you felt, the genesis of that idea?
I actually think that's a really good question, and hopefully there's a fairly interesting answer to that as well. So, long story, I won't go into details now, but look, my boating background's always, it's been since I've been a young fella, and I've done mainly RNLA, and I've always been involved in search and rescue. That's been my complete sort of be-all. Now, I was working offshore in search and rescue as a commander for the offshore oil and gas industry, and we decided for family reasons, that was 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off. That's tough, in the North Sea. That's tough. And when you got a young family as well, it's pretty difficult.
Yeah,
It doesn't really work with family life. You know what I mean? So,
nah, not at all. I can totally relate to that.
yeah, absolutely. Especially because my boy was about the age of your daughter as well now, Christian. So I kind of thought it's time to make a move. Now we had two choices: is either move back to Ireland, or we had been to New Zealand in 2007 and loved it. We'd done a tour all the way from Cape Reinga down to Queenstown. It was just brilliant. We loved it. So I had a few friends over here said, "Well, let's make the move." Now my plan was simply just to use my qualifications. I've got a qualification to skipper up to 200-ton. Internationally.
Well,
I thought when I came over here, there'll be an island nation in the middle of the Pacific. There'll be heaps of work. There'll be heaps. Don't need to worry about it. So, this is a funny one as well. When we got in here, the immigration system for New Zealand, I don't know if you guys know, but there's a points criteria to get into New Zealand, right? And you have to score certain points. And depending on your profession, you get like various points, and then you determine if you get entry or not. But basically, my career path had no points, 0 points.
Wow.
Yeah, nothing. There's no points because there's no need for skippers. Well, at the time there is now with Fuller's Ferry doing. We all know what's going on there.
Absolutely,
but basically, we came in on my wife's qualifications. So she's a hotelier by trade, hospitality, and so we got in. She's a manager. We got in under her qualifications. And then she never worked a day in hospitality in New Zealand. So we came across, and I said, right, I'll get going. I'll just get a job as a skipper. We'll crack on. Oh my God, couldn't get a job. If you don't want to work for Fuller's Ferry, or you don't want to drive a charter boat, getting your eyes gouged out because you're not on the fish, you know what I mean? We got some angry passengers. There's not that much. Really, when I came here, anyway, apart from the odd sort of quirky pilot boat skipper or something like that, there was not that much work. So
not
I thought,
even in the fishing
crap.
industry, like the commercial fishing industry.
Oh, I couldn't do fishing. That's next level stuff. That is. I have a lot of respect for fishermen. A lot of respect.
Yeah.
We had to talk to a few incidents as well with fishing emergencies and things going wrong, and those guys and girls work super hard, and that's a tough gig, man. And I had an inside scoop in that, and I thought, don't want to get involved in that.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm a bit of a I don't know. I prefer to work live as smart as I can and try not to. I've had my young grafting years, and I was kind of just a bit beyond that now. I'm kind of getting a bit too lazy, I think. But anyway, so long story, I'll cut it short. But basically, so I couldn't find a job, and I said, look, I've no option but to fall back on my training skill, because I was a trainer for the RNLA. So I actually used to train all the crew from around the UK and the Irish coast. So I started as a crew member, and then I became a trainer. So I came over here, and I said, do you know what's missing in New Zealand? And this is I'm actually quite passionate about this, is practical training. Why isn't there practical training in this country, fellas? Why not? Why isn't it done? You guys you'll know what I'm talking about. As soon as one of your mates buys a boat and say, I should get some education, what are you going to recommend to them? You're going to say a day skipper course. Of course you are, because that's all that's available really in New Zealand. But it's a theory only course. Now, fellas, let's be honest about this. Honestly, would a piece of paper, when you're doing an assessment or a test in the classroom, does that prepare us for getting on the water in a boat in a dynamic environment where you've got a whole lot of activity around you, and you're doing these assessments, and it says, what do you do when there's a vessel coming from here and a vessel coming from here? Oh yeah, well, I give way to my starboard and turn to starboard, yada yada. Well, what happens when there's 20 coming from here in the white Marrow, there's 3 overtaking you, and there's 4 coming from here and another 7 coming from that direction? Only real world experience and real world practical training on boats, in my opinion, as per every other country I've ever worked in, which has been quite a few. They all do practical training, so I'm quite stumped in New Zealand. So we set up our practical training here, and it's gone gangbusters, absolute gangbusters.
Awesome.
We're so busy that people are just loving the practical courses, to get them out. And as hopefully you can appreciate, and you might realize as well that we try to make it a bit of fun, as well. So hopefully it's
Oh,
fun.
mate.
Yeah.
I just think
No,
about, like, just imagine, Jake, if we had this practical training, because we just got taught off our dad, the old
Yeah.
dads. And to be honest, for that, I don't think I even got taught. I remember just buying a boat, and the first thing, you're going to love this. This boat I bought is a little yellow tinny that didn't really have any seaworthiness. You remember these, Steve, Jake?
I do remember
Is
Steve.
this one? Is
This
this
is
another
an
one Jake
absolute.
went to look at for you?
Yeah.
No, he didn't look at this one. I looked at this one. This one here is probably the reason why you can't have kids. And anyway, it wasn't the most seaworthy, but the first thing I did, and I don't know why I did this, but I went straight over the Makatu bar. Now, I had no boat experience whatsoever, and I just thought, let's just follow this other boat and go over and do it. And we did.
Wow.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
like, I'm still
Non-fiction.
alive, but it
Yeah.
taught me, that boat taught me so much about how to move through the ocean in quite a rough sea and all that, because it wasn't that capable. So if you wanted a comfortable ride, you had to drive it, sail it, whatever you want to call it, maneuver it in a certain way, and there were certain tides that I'd avoid and all that. Now, I can tell you a day skipper wouldn't teach me that.
No, absolutely not. You're 100% right. And in fairness, I always say it's all TPEJ is an acronym that I always refer to, and that's the learning process for boating. We start with the training, and that's where I can come in and I can mitigate a lot of the common mistakes that you're going to encounter because I know them. We've been teaching for so long. We've seen all the mistakes that can possibly be made. We've seen them, so we try to mitigate that. And then P is for your practice. That's go out and practice what you've been trained. And then comes your E, and that's where you jump straight into E, which is your experience. And then those 3 give you judgment at the end of it for the J. So that's a
Yeah,
TPE.
right.
Live by it.
I'm going to
That's
write
a really
that
good
T.
little acronym. Yeah. But it's. I really wanted the conversation to go this way, and this is exactly why we got you here, Andrew. And I want to hit you with some stats. And I did a little bit of research, which was unsort of characteristic of me. Now, these are 2020 numbers from a boating survey. Okay, now there's 1.6 million New Zealanders involved in boating, and as we mentioned, that's the highest per capita. Okay, 75% of boaties gain knowledge from friends and family, so pretty much just like what Christians mentioned. Only 57% check the weather before they go out.
Wow.
41% have 2 forms of communication. And between 2015 and 2020, 98 lives were lost at sea. Now, it's always tricky with drowning numbers, boating numbers. I must admit, I don't know how they got to that. If that's overall drowning numbers, I don't think it is. I think that's boating-related deaths here. So there's 2 schools of thought, right? There's the school of thought that 1.6 million people are doing it, and there's only 98% people. I say only 98% people. These are obviously people with families and all the rest of it. But it's still too many, isn't it? And when you look at some of those stats there, I mean, 57% check the weather. That's just a little over
nuts,
half.
man.
I mean,
Yeah.
it is nuts. And
that's,
I think what you're mentioning, Andrew, about hands-on, practical skills is the answer. And it really worries me that boat licensing is going to become a political tool and some sort of just another way to rip some money off you, to do an online course where you click a couple of buttons, and it doesn't actually help you. So I suppose my question is to you is, what would you like to see if you were Prime Minister for a day, and you can't be any worse than the 2 I watched on the TV last night during the debate? But what how would you attack this problem?
Yeah. So look, I think the main thing to I guess what I should really start with is when I'm delivering practical training, it's not me delivering the practical training, the content at least. The content has been instilled in me because I've been professionally trained to be a professional trainer. So with the family passing down knowledge, the family passes down their personal experiences that they've had for the past few generations. We don't know the quality of that experience, whether it's good or bad, that's been passed on down. In fact, so I have seen some good knowledge passed down, but equally I've seen some bad knowledge passed down. So for me, it's like I said, the RNLA has been in existence for 200 years. So we've got 200 years worth of learning and experience and professional conduct that's been drilled into me. When we go out on a practical course, like you mentioned there, check the weather. So we'll come out past North Head in a northerly, and all of a sudden we'll start encountering an increased sea state. And the obvious question is, why is this sea state increased? Do you feel this sea state? Now, when we come back in 5 hours' time, I want you to see what this sea state is like again. This is what it looks like at 10 knots, and that's because it's wind against tide. What do you think it's going to look like at 20 knots? Now, when we come back, you'll see yada, yada, yada. So it really does cement it, and people, and I just see that light bulb moment every time. I see it every day with people, just ping, oh, now I get the importance of checking the forecast. Now I get it. Whereas if you just tell people, oh, check the forecast, it's just a done thing, it just doesn't have the same impact. So to answer your question, I would say you're 100% right. And Jake, I agree with you 100%. The licensing, and this might surprise some people because I'm in training and people think, oh, won't I do great from a license coming in? Not interested. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested about outcomes, and an online course is exactly that is what's going to happen, Jake. It will just be an online thing. It'll be to get money out of people, do a little bit of thing. Don't get me wrong, you need the theory knowledge. You must have that. You've got to have the buoys and the collision rules and a few other bits and pieces, but we can do that on the boat. So I would say if I was Prime Minister for the day, I would definitely say, in New Zealand, we've tried the theory-only model. It hasn't worked. We're now leapfrogging practical. It looks potentially, I would say it's not going to go any other way. It will go because there's no practical training. There's not the infrastructure currently in this country to deliver practical training. It could be built, but there's no interest or motivation to build it. And we're jumping straight into online courses. Now look at the American videos, guys, on Instagram as well. They have boat licenses over there, and guess what they are? An online course that you do when you're 14 at school, and you never do it again. It's a license for life. What is the point? What is the point? It's point. So just to summarize, practical training, that's the way it should go. And I think people, once they do practical training, I assure you, anyone who comes in our courses love the courses. They enjoy it, and they actually do it. You don't have to do our course, but we're so busy because people enjoy it, they recommend us, and they want to be there. So I would say practical is the only way to go next before we start mandating anything.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Jake, because you just think about the only way we learned about looking at the weather was getting smacked around in Steve when we'd go out on the wrong days. And then we started looking at the weather and going, we want to go out on days when we don't get beaten up.
Yeah.
So,
100%. This might sound really bad, but I found since moving to New Zealand as well, sometimes New Zealand does have a bit of a stick approach. They don't use a carrot approach so much in a few aspects. So we're all, and I refer to just silly things like back being from Ireland, we have a lot more incentives to do things. Even kids, orthodontic treatment is tax deductible to try and relieve the pressure on the health system, and just things like that where they try to incentivize people to do things. But in New Zealand, it doesn't seem to be as incentive based. In my experience, it just seems to be coming in. This is it. This is going to be the stick, and you're going to do this, and this is the way it's going to happen. Why don't we try? Encouraging people and just teaching people that this is a fun, good way to go forward and try the practical. And let's see it and just try it at least and see if it improves outcomes. If it doesn't, well, then we need to look at something else. But it will.
Yeah. That's a really, really good point. We're so much a consequence-based approach, isn't it? And I'm glad you brought up the American stuff. And as I mentioned at the start of the podcast, your Instagram is full of particularly Haulover Inlet and
I love those ones. You got some cool.
Like this. And again, as you say, these are people who have clicked a few boxes on an online course, and it just does them no good.
No good. You've got to, Jake, put his Instagram link in our whatever somehow, because that feed is just hilarious. Some of that stuff.
It's at Powerboat Training, I'm assuming. Is that how people find you?
Yep, it's at Powerboat.training. Yeah.
.training. So I was going to do that at the end, but we'll drill it into people now. I suppose here's the other thing I hear people saying, and I don't really have an answer for this, so it's fighting against this, which is you look at some of the maritime disasters we've had in New Zealand. I mean, the Rena comes to mind, the Enchanter tragedy, other ones recently. These are licensed skippers who have got it wrong. Now, like, we're humans, right? We're going to make mistakes. But what do you say to people that go, well, these were licensed people who got it wrong still, or anyway, and obviously with tragic consequences. So what do you say to that? Because for me, that doesn't really hold water, but I don't have much more to add to that.
It's an easy answer. They haven't been practically trained. Commercial skippers in New Zealand, they're not practically trained. They don't get on a boat to get any practical formal training. So to become a skipper in New Zealand, a commercially qualified skipper, like an SRL, is what the basic criteria that we're referring to here for the smaller boat. Basically, it's sea time. So you just need sea time aboard a commercial vessel, or you just need signed off, and you've got a task book that you need to complete, which says that you know how you've demonstrated how to fault find on an outboard engine. You've demonstrated this, and maybe you've spent 5 hours, 5 days, whatever it is, of watch keeping. But there's no formal sort of trainer stroke assessor get on a vessel with you and take you out and check you out. Why not? Why not?
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. So that's my answer to that one. Again, no practical training.
Yeah.
Jake, that's actually interesting, because with that the Enchanter one of the findings was that the guys motored through an area of shallow water, which naturally amplifies wave swell, makes it bigger. And so they went through at night when they couldn't see it. It was coming from behind. And that was one of the findings. They probably shouldn't have taken that shortcut.
Yeah.
And maybe that was that practical.
It's hard, we're talking about people who died and stuff, and you don't want to make it a political thing. But yeah, I mean, that's just something when I've talked about it with people, they've jumped down my throat with that. And I didn't know that, Andrew, and that is a really interesting point. Yeah. I want to look away from the people for a minute and look at the boats. And this is going to potentially rub people listening up the wrong way, but are our boats up to it? I mean, I think every new boat being sold, sure, I'm sure there's CPC ratings and that sort of thing, but when I look down the boat ramp, we obviously don't all turn up in brand new Surtees and Stavey Crafts and all the rest of it.
You're having a dig at me here, Jake.
Well, I am. I mean, you are exactly. People buy these things off Trade Meet who know bugger all. And do you think maybe some sort of boat warrant of fitness or some sort of thing like that needs to be in place?
Yeah, I do. I definitely think there should be more regulation on that. And you definitely made me think of Christian as soon as those words came out of your mouth. I was thinking of him out there trying to jumpstart that battery with a pair of screwdrivers.
Hey, that was Jake's boat. I was doing that to Jake's boat because he didn't want to get zapped.
Oh, right.
So he's all high and mighty right now because he's got quite a nice ray glass, whatever. But he's been through the time of ship boats too.
I'll ask you a question in a second. I'll just say first, I have to laugh when I go down on the boat ramp, and you must see it at Kawakawa Bay as well, where you get the guys down there with the old two-stroke donks, and they're trying to start, and they're trying to start it for like 10 minutes, and they finally get to burst into life, and the straight away lines off and off they go, and they're thinking, dude, if you've had that amount of problem at the ramp, you really don't want that problem when you're a few miles offshore. But anyway, I digress.
No, you're absolutely preaching to the converted here. And I do live at Kawakawa Base, and I think this must be like, it's obviously one of the bigger ramps around Auckland, so I do see all sorts. And you just see people have bought these things and have none of the gear, none of the safety gear, and exactly that. If you've spent 10 minutes trying to start it, maybe that's a sign that this thing needs a bit of a birthday. I also just look at some of the unseaworthiness of them. I think, where did you buy this thing? And the trailer's full of rust, so it obviously hasn't got a warrant. But, I just wonder if there shouldn't be some, the Coast Guard, I'm sure, has some numbers on batteries and fuel and all these things. Is there some practical things that your boat, which is your best life-saving tool, by the way, should they have to meet a standard?
Well, I guess it would obviously get complicated, but I think, there should be some sort of standards. But we've got to remember, again, horses for courses. So a boat that's perfectly fine for one of the lakes, that people would buy, you're not going to need, too high stringent standards for that. And what's to stop them from taking that boat and putting it launching at Kawakawa Bay? Because let's be honest here as well, fellas, and let's be realistic. There's not really that that much out there. It's not like anyone's going to stop you from launching a boat that you're not supposed to be. Drink driving as well. There's no real kind of stop checkpoints like there is on the road. So we're kind of relying on people's better nature and common sense to not go drinking when they're on a boat. Whereas on the road, we have the fear of being pulled over at any minute. There's just not the resources in New Zealand. New Zealand is such a vast country, the size of it, for the amount of population. It'd be very hard to kind of police that, I'd say, would be the first point. But I do think another thing that I have found, and there's been a few sort of situations as well where seating arrangements on boats crossing bars is a subject that's quite close to my heart.
You say seating arrangements.
Seating, yeah. A lot of boats, you just kind of go and you're kind of hanging
weight
on
distribution.
Yeah, exactly that. And also just when you're just crossing surf bars and stuff, you're just kind of hanging on for a wing and a prayer on some of the boats, and they're just not appropriate. And you see people taking bow riders out in rough conditions as well that are just wholly inappropriate. They're not suitable for the conditions. So I think it would be that's a whole lengthy conversation to be had. I think there is merit in having some sort of guidelines. I certainly think manufacturers could probably do with some of them are better than others, but I do think they could probably all do with kind of coming to some sort of collective agreement as to what might be a reasonable sort of industry voluntary code, I suppose, that we should try to adhere to. But the newer boats, I mean, I'm not going to name brands or anything like that, but I just do think that some of them, as you guys will well know, are way better placed than some of the other boats as far as seaworthiness goes, eh?
Sure,
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So who is your, if this thing, if it's not mandatory, who's your customer, and how do they find you?
Yeah, so we've got basically it's members of the public who are smart, eh? So it's
Jake, we should sign up for this guy. Eh?
I've
never seen me.
We've been doing this for I've been in New Zealand since 2009, so I've been doing this a long time. And I started off and I thought I was going to go bust. I really did. I spent like a year and a half not being able to pay my rent. I was scrimping and scraping trying to pay the rent. And then, because look, I'm not saying I'm wonderful or great or anything special, but all is, look, I've been well trained. And people pick up on that when they're on the boat with me. They just realize, hang on, this cat's, he's well trained. He knows how to deliver the safety content, and they enjoy it. Most importantly, because being commercial, people aren't going to. You're not going to come to me to get shouted at and get abused. You won't be paying.
Nah.
So I have to make it. I have to make your time valuable. It has to be something that you're going to enjoy and get some great outcomes from. So the word travels, and we get just recommendation, because you won't see us advertising anywhere. Because we haven't needed to really. We're just getting people. They'll do the smart people, as I say. When I come back to that, is they just Google boat training. And we generally pop up on the internet, and they just check us out and then come and see us. I do a little bit of sort of helping companies out as well with their safety management plans and stuff like that. When they're operating smaller vessels and safety boats and things like that, I might step in and help them out as well with their training and just helping their guys get up to speed. Because obviously I can train search and rescue componentry as well as your standard boat and stuff. So yeah, that's kind of where we get our work.
And so you talk about doing like practical, on the helm training. So if I want to do some training, I'm based in Wellington here. Where do I have to travel to get your expertise?
Yeah, well, there's one of two ways: is you either come to Auckland or Auckland comes to you, huh? So,
that sounds good.
Yeah, but there's a cost implication to that. So what we have done in the past, we've got a bunch of people together down in Wellington, in fact, and a few places like that, and they just kind of we get a group together who want to just do some training, and they all pitch in and cover the flights and stuff, and we just sing down there. So I got a couple of instructors as well. Look, I've always been trying to grow, and in New Zealand I've been trying to push, but it's very hard because while I say we're busy, we're busy for me and a couple of my guys. But we're not like national busy, which I'd love to be, because it's because the other courses as well, most people just view them as deemed to be ticking the box, and I've satisfied that requirement. So once we've done that online course, and here's something I'll say to you as well. And look, I'm not into bagging anything or anyone or anything like that. But the one thing I want to say is that in my experience, I've had people on my boat for training, and they've done like a course, a theory-only course, and they've scored 98% in that theory course the prior week, and they feel extremely confident. and think that they're extremely capable. And it's a very big leveler when they get on the boat. And just even we go what's great west of the Auckland Harbour Bridge. You got the Teatitu channel, which is really good for newbies, because you go up there, and if you're like even 2 meters to the wrong side of the port to starboard markers, you'll be aground. It's a great educational place, and they get lost. And I've literally been up there when they've done the theory course, scored 98%, and I'm like, but oh, hang on, didn't you do that course a couple of weeks ago? Oh yeah, but it made sense when I was looking at it. Looking down on with them all on a piece of paper, and I could draw around them. That made sense. But now that I'm in it, it all looks very different around me. I don't really understand. Am I going in or coming out, or I'm just getting confused, And that's what happens. You don't get spatial awareness from theory. So yeah.
No, that's cool, and that's exactly with your TPJA. There we go. There's the E right there.
Bloody hell, you actually wrote it down.
Mate, it's right here. I got me notes. I got my notes.
Wow.
I'm learning here. Well, I'm getting some free education.
Yeah. Mate, you'll be hosting the next debate with skills.
Wouldn't be too hard, man. Did you see that? Yeah. Did you see that debate?
I'm not
I thought they're both in the same party. Anyway, we don't go there. So I want to do this course. Well, not say. I'm going to put it on the Christmas list. How do I sign up? What does it cost? And how long does it take? Get me into it. Sell it to me, man. I'm keen.
So basically, the courses we do, it's not just my organisation. So we're accredited through the RYA, which is the Royal Yachting Association, which is an international organisation for boaties worldwide. And the best thing I could do to kind of illustrate how it works is, PADI for scuba diving, your PADI qualification?
Yep. Yes. Open water, blah, blah, blah,
yeah,
advanced.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the RYA is to boating internationally what PADI is to scuba diving, right?
Ah.
So it's based in the UK. Now, we're a franchise school to the RYA, and they're practically based. So we're actually audited by the RYA. We're checked by the RYA. We have to, be in compliance with all their rules and stuff. So, yeah, the tickets that we award, they're valid internationally. So if you want to go to Australia and hire a boat in Australia, well, you need a license. If you want to go to France, you need a license. But the licenses that we actually award here in Auckland are valid worldwide in a lot of these countries. So that's the sort of the syllabus we cover. We've got different levels of that. I won't go into too much specifics, but basically you're looking at the cost is the hard part, Christian, because, and here's where it's a bit unfortunate. And this is where I'd love to be able to get funding, but I'm not clever enough how to figure out how to get funding, unfortunately, because I'm just a dude who drives boats and teach people how to drive boats. I don't know about that sort of stuff. But the problem is, because the thing is that if you're going to do like a theory course, well, I can teach 30 people in the classroom and charge each $300, and then for 2 days, what's that? I'll earn nine grand or whatever it is, I don't know, but I'll earn a decent amount of cash, and I only have to pay for a classroom. But when I'm teaching on a boat, I'm only allowed through my RWA recognition, and rightly so, I'm only allowed to teach 3 people at a time.
I see. Yeah.
And I have to pay for the boat, I have to pay for the tutor, I have to pay for the insurance, I have to pay for the increasingly extortionate fuel, I have to pay for our insurances, I have to pay for our admin costs, I have to pay for our office costs. So unfortunately, the price is about $700 to $750 for a 2-day course. But that's using our boat. And in fairness, you wouldn't even hire a boat really for that. So we're keeping costs as low as we can to be as inclusive as we can. But that is sort of our weak point, that we do have to charge a little bit more than the other courses,
Oh, but it sounds a bit like invaluable, eh? Hell.
Yeah, and walking away with the license at the end of the day that you can just kind of head overseas and use. If you want to work in the super yacht industry, for example, they insist on the qualifications that we do. So,
that's a bit of a plug there. That's quite cool. So if I want to go, because we actually looked at that, my partner and I, we were like, we'd like to go work on a super yacht, and we didn't have a clue how to get into it. So that's quite interesting. Get this qualification.
There's only 2 things you really need to do to get into the super yachts, and that is you need to do what's called the STCW courses, which are available in other schools around New Zealand. Because all merchant mariners need to do the STCW course. They're the basic like firefighting, sea survival, first aid, and a couple of others. So you need to do that, and then you need to do the RYA course as well, because if you're going to drive the tenders on these super yachts, you need to know your first aid, your firefight, and you need to be able to drive the tenders, and that's what they need these qualifications for. So you do that, and that's what you need, and then you head off overseas and walk the docks, as they say, and get yourself a job.
And so if I wanted to, say, go to Picton, absolutely Nelson picked an area, and I want to hire a yacht from, I don't know, Compass Charters or something, I don't know, like a 40-foot whatever. And they say, sure, you can hire it. And they say, but you need some qualification. What qualification do I need for that? Because they declined me last time.
Very interesting
They
question,
probably
that
watch
one,
your
Christian,
videos,
as
mate.
well, because it depends on the company, because they will have to produce their own safety plan, and their safety plan will have to cover things like your experience. You know, are you actually what you say you are? What qualifications you have. So, in fairness, if you're going to hire boats in New Zealand, again, I won't name names, but I'm just thinking of a couple of organisations off the top of my head. They generally ask for a day skipper qualification, and hopefully a bit of experience as well, depending on the type of vessel, depending on the sailor power. But yeah, that's pretty much all you need, to be honest with you, Christian, is a day skipper, really. But if you go overseas, it's a different story.
Right. Because that's New Zealand only.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Interesting. Jake, I've learned a whole lot here.
Yeah, well, your little brain will be tired. I just think you asked about cost, and I'm glad you did, Christian, but I just think it's almost irrelevant. Like, you look at the cost. I mean, we always talk about ultimate boats on this podcast. There's no point taking a boat 50 grand plus, even if it's less than that. You hard-earned money into this boat, and you're smacking it into things, or you're putting yourself in danger. Like, for what I think is a minimal cost, you can have safe, fun boating that's that you're not going to damage things. I mean, if you're going to spend 500, 600 grand on a ray glass and then prang it into the nearest dock.
Jake, I want to tell you something there as well, right? So I do work for a company, and I'll name them as well. It's ownership in Auckland. Now, what they do is they do fractional ownership, where you basically you buy a tenth of a ray glass 3500 or a sixth or whatever.
I've seen that.
Now, we're the trainers for ownership, right? So anyone who comes in, I've been working for them for the past, since I've been in New Zealand, so about 12 years, whatever it is. Now, he's been talking to his insurance company, so the guy who owns that, a guy called Simon, really nice fella, and he was talking to his insurance company. He told me that they've actually come back to him and said, how are your accidents and your incident rates so low? They said the amount of boats you have, because they've got like 30, 40 boats now. They must have a huge number of boats. I can't even think how many it is. They actually came back and said, your claims are minimal. They said, you're way below the industry average. And he said, do you know what it is? He says, I've got a good training company delivering the training first. And that's not me blowing our trumpets in, oh, we're wonderful. That's me just saying, look, we go out, we check them out, hey. So when people come in, and we do say some people turn up, and most people you can bring to the water and they'll drink it, but some people are kind of like just struggle a little bit, and maybe boating's not there. I think maybe they'd be a bit safer with a bit of golf, you know what I mean? Buy them some maybe buy some clubs and send them on their way type thing, yeah. So you do get the odd one or two people like that, but most people are pretty good. So what we do is we go out and we check them, and lads, it's quite an endeavour, because we brief the all what we're supposed to do first. We understand their knowledge. If you're a newbie, brand new to boat, and you'll do 2 days. If you claim to be experienced, maybe 1 day, and we'll essentially try to get you to bump into some rocks, but obviously we'll stop you. So what I'm trying to say is to check: are you checking your chart and your plotter as you properly should, according to industry standard? Because if you don't, you're going to have trouble, and it's easy to pick up when you've got people out. And all it is like literally just head over to this bay, head over to there, and head over to there. But somewhere I take you, it will have some of those sneaky rocks on your plotter that when you zoom out, they'll disappear. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not trying to catch people out. That's not what it's about. What it's about is, and this is the feedback I always get, is, that was probably the best boating experience I've ever had, because I've learned something here of how I could potentially get into trouble. And I've just been very lucky in the past that I haven't actually encountered that problem. And that's what we get. We get that feedback all the time. And hence, their boats don't go aground. They just don't go aground.
And they save money. Man, that's insane.
You talked earlier about a carrot approach, and maybe that's something insurance companies need to look at. Some sort of discount or whatever for people who attend a training situation like yours. I think also too, just picking up on the big boat stuff. You mentioned the Ray Glass 3500 and obviously bigger boats, and Christian and I see it. Well, we obviously have trailer boats. The amount of big boats that just steam through, and I'm sure it's perfectly legal, but just steam through areas at full speed. Yep, look, they're 200 meters away. They're not doing anything legally wrong, but because they've never been in a kayak or been in a little, rubber ducky or a little fiberglass boat like ours. They don't have that appreciation that I'm going through here with about a 6-foot wake. It's I barely spill my gin on my 50-foot Riviera, but for someone else, it's nearly thrown them out. And I just that appreciation, I suppose, and having those conversations while they're doing the training would be invaluable as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%. Yeah, and that's what we do as well. You do go out and you just point out, look out the back, like, and when they do it as well, and you're on board, you can kind of see it coming up. And look, this sometimes you've just got to let people make some mistakes, as long as they're safe mistakes to make. Sometimes you have to let them make that mistake so that they understand the consequences of their action. Because if you constantly tell people stuff, it just goes in one ear and out the other. But when they see the consequences of their actions and it's pointed out to them and it's told it's not appropriate, they tend to take on board it a little bit more, But those big boats, we are seeing a lot of people. And I'll just say one thing as well here, that and again, we get boat dealers, we get good boat dealers and bad boat dealers, and I've had a whole heap of both in my time in New Zealand. And I can't stand this term is when they're selling boats, they say, oh, if you can drive a car, you can drive a boat, a powerboat. I mean, and that to me is just pure negligence. And even, believe it or not, it even goes to some of the bigger boats as well. And they at the boat show, I was once in attendance at the Auckland Boat Show, at the On the Water one, and we had a stand there a few years back, and we had someone coming over going, would you mind having a chat with this fella here, because he's just bought a boat from that dealer over there, and they're just giving him the keys, and he's never driven a boat before. Now, we're talking, it was a 55-foot, I won't say what type of boat it was, but it was a 55-foot boat, and it was like, are you seriously just going to give him the keys to that boat? And it was like, well, yeah,
Wow.
he can't. He's not even going to be able to leave the marina. Anyway, it was a bloody
well, he
nightmare.
could, but there'll be some fiberglass crushed.
Yeah, exactly.
Imagine the weight of that coming in at even one knot into the marina too fast.
Yeah, man, the damage. And the marinas are dealing with this day in, day out, because I work with all the marinas, and the marinas are they're also trying to do the right thing. They don't want their assets damaged by these boats, and they don't want the boats next door getting smashed up. So they're trying to encourage these owners to just come and at least get some parking training, how to berth the bloody thing. Rather than just, we had one fella in West Haven Marina who he kept smashing into the pole and damaging his boat, and turns out he was on a twin engine boat and he only had one engine operational, and he was new to boating.
Oh, jeez.
Now, I don't know if you've ever driven a launch with one engine, but it's hard work.
And you'd know,
Oh man, even just
the experience would notice.
I was going to say, even just the shaft drive's hard. That's complete. I've got an outboard, right? And I've driven jet boats and PWCs and all that. They all handle completely differently.
Yeah,
like,
100%.
and if you got a sailboat that doesn't have a bow thruster, shit, I don't know how the hell they do those type maneuvers with them. Good on them. That's why I don't steer them in a marina.
Yeah, one engine on a twin engine boat, lots of circles. You know what I mean?
Like the Bismarck or the Graf Bay, whatever one that got torpedoed. Hey, another question though? Do you get a lot of women? I think, from what I see anyway, that a lot of men assume that I take the wheel and you pack the lunch, and it's obviously misogynistic sort of ideologies that are present. But do you see a lot of women doing your courses, and do you recommend that, I suppose?
Yeah, 100%. So, and a few things. So, firstly, as far as females in boating, I mean, it's real common nowadays. I mean, I don't really think there's any barrier or anything like that. I mean, some of my best friends are female trainers as well back in Europe, and just exceptional, just great at what they do. And if you look at Fuller's Ferry, I mean, the female crews on the Fuller's Ferry now is I would say, it's got to be 50-50, I would imagine, from what I've seen anyway. So on the courses, I would say traditionally, and this is just my observation, would be typically when a family turns up with a boat, it generally is the husband who would be doing the skippering of the boat, and the wife will want to do the crewing on it. Now, that's not always the case. Sometimes both of them want to be brought to speed, but it's generally, and in fairness, it's normally because the wife just doesn't want it. She's not interested. She just doesn't want the responsibility or the hassle, because it just doesn't want to drive the boat. Now, what we found is that the wives, we always ask them to come along on the course of if a guy's coming along with a family boat, we always ask for the partner to come along as well, because
know it.
it's actually, you've seen the screaming at the boat ramp down, we've all seen it, and the dude shouting at the wives because they haven't telepathically understood which ropes they want on first, which lines they want on first, you know what I mean? So we teach them how to communicate with each other and how they should actually interact and how to make things happen without these stressful outcomes.
Marital advice. This is quality.
I tell you,
Multiple
boat
purposes
training.
in
So
this
much
training.
more than boat training.
Jeebus.
Absolutely. And I guess that so and then the other final point I was going to say on that is the one of the big one we get would be the wives generally saying that they're just a bit concerned that if something were to happen to the husband, they wouldn't really know what to do. Now I'd like to just offer some reassurances that it's quite rare that, in fact, I'm not aware of any situations where the husband became incapacitated and the wife was expected to navigate and drive a boat home. That's not really realistic. The best thing to do is stabilize the boat in its environment, in the situation, and then rescue comes to you in the form of a helicopter, or the Coast Guard, or police, or whoever. But they do definitely need to know all about the emergency procedures and what to do: fire, abandoning boat, sinking vessel, all about the emergency communicating equipment, the operational life jackets. And I just want to say, fellas, I'd love to use this opportunity and use your platform just for a second to say there's a few things that I found a commonplace in New Zealand boating, and that is inflatable life jackets. People are not servicing their life jackets. If you have an inflatable life jacket on the boat and it hasn't been serviced in the past year, throw it in the bin. Do not wear it. You may as well tie your shoes around your neck, because they'll do just as good if you haven't had that life jacket serviced. We get a lot of bottles unscrewing from the activation mechanism. We get lots of punctured bladders that people don't know about until their time of need, and it's too late then to retrospectively service a life jacket. Also, I'll bet you two fellas, I don't need an answer to this, but I'll bet you two fellas, if you got flares in your boat, maybe this is just generally, this is 90% of the population I've experienced. They go, and you reminded me, Christian, earlier on when he said they had all the gear but no idea. And it's, if you've got flares on your boat, people think that they're being safe because they put flares on the boat. They come in that yellow canister with the red screwy cap, and most people that I hop on the boat, 90%, 95% even, would not be able to tell me what flares are in that box. Now, do you think
tell you what's in mine, and I know it's expired.
There you go. And do you think that information is going to magically descend upon your head at your time of need on a dark night when it's pouring rain and heavy wind, which is when we generally have emergencies? Do you think you're going to be able to take it out and read the instructions when you got someone who's like swimming in the water next to the boat holding onto a rope? That don't fly. You need to be able to activate these things. You need to be able to reach into that box, pull out a flare, know how to do it by feel in pitch dark, and activate that. No, is it going to fire up into the sky, or is it going to be a flame that just pokes out the end, or is it an orange smoke that's not even going to be visible at night? You need to know these things, and this is the sort of stuff that we cover in our course, because if you don't know, you don't know to ask the questions, and no one's out there other than on these practical things telling you this stuff and showing you on your boat, this is your gear, this is the stuff. So, and then with the partners as well, they need to know about the VHF radio. You need to know channel 16 is the emergency channel. If you've got an EPIRB, you need to goddamn know how it works. If you've got life jackets, do your passengers know how to inflate the life jacket? Because they may have, and this is true, people don't know how to inflate the life jackets. They tuck the inflate tag up into the life jacket, because they don't want to get entangled. But you won't be able to activate that when you fall in the water. Your passengers won't know about it. Is your life jacket automatic, manual? I could go on and on and on and on. But I just wanted to make a point there that particularly with life jackets and those means of communication, make sure not just you don't keep that knowledge to yourself. You got to make sure that your 2IC, second in charge, second in command, you got to make sure that they know how to use this equipment, because you can't retrospectively debrief or brief when you're lying face down on the decks. You hit your head on something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No,
absolutely. Yeah. There's been a few items there, eh?
Yeah, 100%. There was that one in Lake Road to Iti. I don't know if it was 2017, January 2017. I actually used the article as an educational piece. The guy jumped out for his hat from the boat, and there was nothing else wrong, but the boat blew away from him, and it was a complete cataclysm of absolute errors. He when he jumped in, the boat blew away from him. His partner and 9-year-old son were on the boat with him, but they didn't know how to start the engine. If only she was briefed on how to maneuver that boat so it was upwind. Didn't need to know how to drive it, just with precision, just upwind, so that he could have swam and it would have at least blown towards him. If he'd known how to do that, he'd be here today. His life jacket fell off. it wasn't done up properly. She didn't know how to use the flares. There was lots of other things like that. It was a terrible, terrible tragedy that, and unfortunately, it was a bad outcome because he lost his life. But it was because, and I hate to say it, that it wasn't her fault. It was because she wasn't briefed, and he didn't think, and he didn't know to actually to brief, and the points to brief. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, man.
It is big as belief, and I mean we're just as bad. We're shaking our heads here, going, yeah, I've
Guilty.
got my flare packet, and I think, I've ticked the box, so to speak. I've got my VHF and my forms of communication, but that understanding, I suppose, and that ability to use those skills, as you mentioned, under pressure in the night,
Yeah.
when you're panicked, because it's scary. It's not like a car where you just pull over to the side and. That is fantastic advice, and I hope everyone listening does take a bit of time. As soon as the weather gets better, using this crappy weather as a time to get your boat ready and your safety gear ready.
Just to come back in from
Oh, nice to hear. I suppose following on from that, is some of the technology, and I'm conscious of the time here, but is some of the technology we're using, as much as it's great, GPSs and stuff, but are we too reliant on it? Are we becoming lazy in that we just stare at the screen and take it, verbatim, that it's actually putting us in the right position and these sorts of things?
Yeah, 100%. So let me answer that with again, just to quantify it. So I do work. I do some work for Auckland Airport. I've helped out their search and rescue guys, because they've got a team that their firefighters actually operate two jet boats and a couple of hovercraft. And one thing that I train with them, I've been doing it a long time. I came in quite a few years ago with them to help upskill them. Is I turn off the plotter. I just turn it off, and I turn off the radar, and all I give them is a hand bearing compass and a chart. And I say, right, I want you at night to navigate us to point A, B, C, or there's a casualty at such and such a position. You need to get there, best safe speed. Now, why do I do that? It's not in case your plotter fails. That's not the case. Why I do it is because it actually gives you an ability of spatial awareness to challenge what the plotter is telling you for those times that the plotter is incorrect, which does happen. I won't tell you scenarios that would make that happen, but there's quite a few situations that your plotter will tell you an incorrect course to steer, and there's many reasons for that. Now, that could take you over rocks, but I've got these guys now to a point where they will challenge the technology. So they will look at the technology and they will say, oh yeah, I'm being told to do this, and I call it the ninja test. All the guys out there know the ninja test. And it's basically, you just sit down and you ninja it and you think, does that make sense? And you just go on your gut feel. Because once you've done bearings and courses and distance and times, you understand how to navigate, you understand how it works, you know it's telling you something wrong, and you say, stop the boat, something is wrong. Whereas if you don't have that ingrained basic skill of knowing where north is, and I know this is going real to basics, but if you don't know that, you don't know to challenge it, and you just blindly follow it. But don't get me wrong as well. Technology is progressing so well that's the case. Maybe in the future, when we get ChatGPT to be navigating us around, maybe we will be able to sit back and have a lax and have a G and a T while the Tesla bot kind of chauffeurs around the bay. Maybe we'll get there, but we ain't there yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe it could catch some fish for you, Christian?
Needs the help, does he?
Hey, look, that's fantastic advice, and it's been really fascinating to hear about what is on offer, because I absolutely agree with you that I think the tick box test isn't up to it, and even the day skippers is, as much as it. Yep, look, it is a good first step. We know that it's not enough for people. Just moving away from the safety for a minute, a couple of quick fires before we let you get back to it. Okay, where's your ultimate boating location? Where do you love to go?
Oh, British Virgin Islands, no question.
Oh, brilliant. Is that where the planes come in and you stand there and they blow your head off?
Yeah, I tell you, it's funny enough, the Virgin Islands, I actually liken it to New Zealand. If New Zealand had bars on beaches, it would be the British Virgin Islands. My favorite location would actually be here, because I'll tell you, the Hauraki Gulf is actually would, and I'm not trying to pander to any audience here, but it would be my second best. We're just missing the bars on the beaches.
Yeah, but any place in the Gulf in particular?
I love just I think with my family, because with my kids being young enough, we don't do treks far afield. So we just pretty much do a bit of island hopping. And what we're about is just exploring. So we just love going into even quick trips out at the weekend. We just shoot to Modahi. And what I love with the kids and why it's so good is because I give my kids VHF radio, and I have done for many years, and just send them off on the double kayak, and they'll go ashore and they'll explore. And they're safe. You couldn't do the same in Auckland or send them out west here and where I live and trust they'll be fine. But as long as they've got their VHF radio, and the independence that gives them is just sensational. So I love, and if I want to do a bit of socialising, then it's obviously Oniroa or Bonaccord, somewhere where there's a cafe close by. Do you know what I mean? But
Nice.
yeah, that's kind of me really. I'm a simple guy kind of.
There's a couple of my favourite spots as well. And your ultimate boat, to go to those places, and what's your ultimate boat? You win Lotto tomorrow night in the draw. You win 20 million. You can buy whatever you want. What's your ultimate boat?
Thunderchild 2.
Thunderchild 2. What the hell?
Thunderchild 2.
Have you seen that, Jake?
Yeah.
No, I
it's
haven't
like a
seen
Coast
it.
Guard boat.
Yeah, it's a Broadhaven Marine, who's an Irish company, and they build the most unbelievably safe, incredible boat. It's a wave piercing boat with quad cats, surface piercing props.
Surface drive. It's also surface drive. Yeah. And they can roll it, and it automatically rolls back up, and they've got like springs in the seats and all that sort of shit.
That's right. It
Check
goes
it out on
through
YouTube,
wind,
bro.
not over them. Eh? So if you rock up anywhere in that, I tell you, you'll be turning heads.
You'll be safe.
Oh,
we'll make sure to
Jake, put a link to it in
the
the thing for that. That thing's insane.
Is that right? That's absolutely, you've caught me off guard on that one. I like to think I have an encyclopedic knowledge of boats, and that absolutely caught me off guard. Brilliant.
Awesome.
And just lastly, where do you think boating will be in like 10 years' time? What are some of the things you're starting to notice now and you think will become trends or sort of normalized?
Technology, and reliance on technology. For example, I do see that there will ultimately, it depends on how much money you've got, obviously, but I'm seeing certainly on the upper end of boating, we're starting to see even self-parking boats now, where you got sensors in the marina berth. You just push a button and it just parks itself. You've got all those skyhook features. When you're out, you can just turn on skyhook and maintain in position. So I would say really that's kind of the area it goes. Hopefully it doesn't go too far, because let's come back to basics. Why do we boat? Why do we actually boat? We boat to get away from it all. What I do anyway, this is my opinion. And we just want to get out. We want to have a mobile batch with a new view every time. And to be perfectly honest with you, even though yes, that's my favorite boat, I couldn't care less what my boat is. It could be a garden shed on a barge for all I care about, as long as it's safe and it get me out to the bays.
Yeah, get over Christian then.
Do the exploring I want. At least I'll buy a new battery.
I love how that's my boat now, eh? I was fixing his fuck up.
Who talks most wins.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant.
You're so right. It is. That's exactly what boating's about. And we've, if you're floating, you're boating is our sort of mantra. And,
beautiful.
And obviously, if you're doing it in a safe way, so everyone comes home, that's really important too. Hey, look, that's all from me. I don't know if you've got anything else, Christian.
Let the man go, man. We've had him for how long? Like an hour and a bit. I feel so fortunate.
Yeah.
We've learned so much.
Hey guys, love what you do. Love your show. Thanks a million for having me on. It's an absolute pleasure, and you're two great lads. So I wish you all the best, and I hope you go from strength to strength with your podcast.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Really appreciate it. And once again, that's at powerboat.training on Instagram. If you Google Powerboat Training, sounds like he's the first one there. Christian and I are definitely going to, I reckon we do a challenge where we come up and see who knows the most one day, perhaps, and maybe have a crack and see who's the fastest learner.
The fastest learner.
Yeah. You've often been called a slow learner, Christian, so I think I'll win that one.
Hey, fellas, it's been a blast. But stay in touch anyway, all right?
We'll do. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Hopefully we see the sunshine soon. Take care.